Hello, this is Avish Parashar. Thank you for joining me for Soloprov, my latest improv comedy mini show where I am going to play a few improv games for you, and then I will break down a little bit about what I did in those improv games and share with you some ideas you can take away and apply immediately off stage, back at work, in your life in order to respond to change, be more creative, whatever the lesson is of that game. Now, through this program, I'm going to do improv games. Normally, I would get suggestions from a live audience. Since I don't have a live audience right now, at least for vocal, I'm going to give you the opportunity to enter things into the chat. Now, I know that people come and go on these things, so I can always come up with my own ideas. But we can ask as we go. But in my chat box, I have posted how to preload the question. So there's 4 suggestions I'm going to need over the course of today. This 20 some odd minutes. Anytime you want, you can enter those into the chat, and I may use those suggestions in one of the games I talk about. Now, these mini shows have a theme about improv comedy and how we can apply it off life. Today's mini show theme will be making strong offers. An offer, I got stuff coming right here. An offer is anything in improv comedy that you put to the scene, that you essentially offer, for lack of a better term. And that could be, what's going on over here? All right. Sorry. An offer is anything you put out to the improv scene. It could be something you say. It could be something you do. It could be something silent. It could be not doing anything at all. But an offer is what you're essentially offering the scene, offering your partner. And then your partner takes that offer and does something with it. Ideally, they do something with it, and then they offer something back. And in improv, there are strong offers and weak offers. So a general offer is I walk into a scene with another performer, and I say, oh, hey, you're late for our meeting. Don't you know that we got to do that big pitch right now? All right. The offer that I've put out is we're coworkers. We have an important meeting. We got a big pitch coming up. All right. That's an offer. A weak offer is one that is vague. It doesn't move the action forward. It's kind of non-committal. So if I walked into that scene, instead of saying, hey, you're late, we've got a meeting to go to for that big pitch. If I walked in and said, oh, hey, what are you doing here? Well, notice how that puts the onus on the other partner. It doesn't make, there's nothing specific in what I said. It doesn't move the action forward. It's just putting a question out to the scene. Weak offer. Strong offer. Hey, you're late and we have a huge pitch right now in our business meeting. Now that's a strong offer because it makes it very clear the scenario, right? It establishes some of the who, what, and where. We are coworkers. We're about to walk into a meeting, and it raises the stakes because we're about to make a big pitch. So it's high stakes, strong offer that moves things forward. So you have the option then in improv making weak offer or a strong offer. And same thing off stage, you have the option of making a weak offer or a strong offer. And in improv, we like to do strong offers. So I'm going to play an improv game now to demonstrate the difference between strong offers and weak offers. It's one of my favorite games, and if you were on my first mini show, you saw me do this game, but I'm going to do it with a variation on it. It's a game called Blind Line, where I'm going to begin telling you a story that I make up here, but periodically I'm going to read a line off of one of these cards. Now, these are cards I collected from live events, but didn't really use in those performances. I play this game to end my keynotes, so I've saved these cards, and now I'm going to use them. I'm going to read a line. Now, normally, I don't see these at all. This time, what I did is I have 2 stacks of cards that I've collected. One of these stacks, the first one, is what I consider weak offers. And it's interesting because the weak offers are mostly motivational sayings, pithy sayings, things that would definitely come to mind when I ask the audience to write down a sentence. But I found that they don't really drive the action forward. So I'm going to tell this story once with these weak offer cards, and then I'm going to redo the story but with strong offer cards that are more specific, and you can see the difference between how a weak offer moves the story forward versus a strong offer. So to begin, I need a suggestion. For this, I'm looking for a way that 2 people might know each other or be connected. If you want to give me a suggestion, just write in the chat box, how might 2 people know each other? Not necessarily related as in brothers or family members, but any way 2 people might be connected or know each other. So I'll just throw one out then. I will say that the 2 people in my story are going to be a therapist and patient. So a therapist and a patient, I'll tell a story about that. And I'm going to do this first person just because that's kind of how I usually do this exercise, so to keep it flowing. Now I'm going to do it twice. First, we'll see about a minute each time. This is with the week offer. Hey, I want to tell you a story about a time I went to see my therapist and something went terribly wrong. See, I had been struggling a lot with issues around my self-esteem and my confidence. So I went to my therapist and asked him, what should I do? Well, he looked at me and he said, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And I thought, well, that's interesting advice, but I'm being very nice, I thought, but I think I'm being too nice. I think that I'm so nice that my self-esteem is low because people keep, brushing me down and pushing me down. And so I said to my therapist in response, I said, when people show you who they are, believe them. And he was like, what? I'm saying, you're showing me who you are. You're giving me bad advice. You just want me to be nice so I never get curious, so I keep paying you money. And at this point, he realized that I was on to him. And he stopped, and he looked me deep in the eyes, and he said to me, treat others the way that you want to be treated. And I said, well, I want to be treated nicely, but I want to be treated with respect. And I've treated you with respect. I think your advice is bogus. So I got up and I stormed right out of there. And when I realized my therapist was actually keeping me down, and I stopped and I thought to myself, right there, I was freer than I had ever been. I thought to myself, everyone can rise above their circumstances and achieve success if they're dedicated to and passionate about what they do. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Now, I pulled about 4 cards there, and that story wasn't kind of going anywhere. Now, what's interesting is because I don't want to put too much pressure on the audience, when I do this, on the card even, it says, write a sentence. It could be a famous quote or line from a book or a TV show or movie. And some people write the latter, but a lot of people write down these kind of standard sayings. I can, I will, I must. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. That's what I did. Treat others the way you want to be treated. That's when a lot of ones I use, I'm popping back up. Time waits for no one, but we often find ourselves waiting on time. Now, what's interesting is those are all total logical things to write down. But what I found is that those statements are so generic and vague, they don't drive the story at all forward. And in fact, when I'm playing this game live and I pull like 2, 3, 4 cards like that, the story doesn't go anywhere. But some of the cards, like the ones I pulled out here, are stronger offers in that they are more specific. Oftentimes they're lines of dialogue from a movie or a play or a famous book quote. But because they're specific, they're always funnier, and they give direction to the scene. So I'm going to redo that game, but I'm going to start from the same place. Right? I did this story about a therapist and a guy going in saying he was struggling with his self-esteem, and he asked his therapist. And from there, the first card is going to be a therapist's advice, just like it was in the last version, but you're going to see how the strong offers make the story more entertaining and drive it forward in a different way. So here we go. I want to tell you a story about a time I was going to my therapist. See, I was struggling a lot with my self-esteem and confidence issues. So I sat down with my therapist, and I said to my therapist, what should I do? And my therapist, he said to me, the green frog hops through the forest. And that really confused me, but then I realized what he was giving me was a metaphor. Because a frog is a forest monster, or a forest animal that hops, and it does what it does naturally. And I was a human creature, but I wasn't doing what came naturally to me. So I needed to dig deep and say, Avish, what is your frog and forest? What do you do naturally? And that's when it hit me. I looked at him, I thought to myself, all it takes is 20 seconds for something great to happen. Now that could be a vague one, but all it takes is something great to happen for 20 seconds. And I said, I just need 20 seconds of being myself. Just 20 seconds of being myself is all I need. So I just stood up in the middle of therapy session and I said, Avish, what will really be yourself? And my therapist was confused. He'd never had someone do this before. So my therapist stopped me. He said, excuse me. And he said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that was the breakthrough I needed. I said, yes, I don't know what I'm going to get. I need to stop worrying. I just need to be that frog. So I walked out of the therapist's office. I said, you know what, therapist? I don't need you anymore. I'm cured. And I walked out and I said, what is my green frog moment? And that's when it hit me. It was like a voice coming down from heaven saying to me, you make me want to be a better man. I said, I want to be a better man. That's all I want. I don't want to be the same person with confidence issues. I just want to be a better man. So I said, yes, I'm going to be a better man. So I left that office right there and I started my quest. And I walked up to the first person I saw on the street and I grabbed them and I just said to them, we are sexy payroll people. Now, that was very strange for that person. They're like, why are you calling me a sexy payroll person? But I realized at that time I worked in payroll, and I felt like a sexy payroll person, but I was so timid and lacking confidence that I didn't do anything with it. And I said, I'm a sexy payroll person. Why are you calling me a sexy payroll person? But I realized at that time I worked in payroll, and I felt like a sexy payroll person, but I was so timid and lacking confidence that I didn't do anything with it. And I said, I'm a sexy payroll person, and you can be too. And that person said, yes, I want to be a sexy payroll person as well. Now, I'm going to stop right there. That story could go on. But if you watch both versions of that story, hi, Buaji, welcome. Thank you for watching. If you're watching both versions of that story, you may have noticed that the second version, there was more action, it was funnier, and things kind of drove forward, right? Instead of just being about these platitudes that were very generic about like being kind and treating others, these random quotes about a sexy payroll person and life is like a box of chocolates and the green frog hops in the forest drove the action forward. Now, there's something to be said there then for my industry and professionals like me, speakers, motivational speakers. So many of times people write down as these suggestions some of these motivational platitudes. And it's so interesting that in these games, those things just stop the action. They don't drive us forward. They might be motivational, but they're not strong offers. So when we are in an improv scene, in a story like this, the strong offers, I love those. It drives the scene forward, it lets humor, it opens up creativity. So now off stage, you have the same choice. We're going through this lockdown, this pandemic, this quarantine, whatever you want to call it. And you may be thinking of things to do. How can I deal with this? Whether it's you're a small business owner and what can I do? You're struggling in your career, you're having trouble with your relationship, being in this new situation, and you're getting ideas. Ask yourself, is the idea I'm thinking about a strong offer or a weak offer? And a weak offer is like, let me think about it. Let me do some research. Let me write some notes. It doesn't really do much, but it makes you feel like you're doing something. A strong offer is just one step forward, but it's specific and forward moving. I promise you, if you take a look and pick one strong offer to do every day and just see where it goes, you don't have to have the whole thing figured out, right? I didn't know where the story was going to go when I said the green frog hops in the forest. It was just the first strong offer, and I went with it. So look through your actions. If you've got your brainstorm list of potential things, if you're working with your team, differentiate the strong offers from the weak offer and act on the strong offer and see where that takes you. So that's the first tip. Make the difference between a strong offer and a weak offer. All right. Second thing with strong offers is to start with where you are. Right? Too often we wish we were somewhere else. We wish situations were different. We don't access our creativity because we don't take action because we're hoping everything was different. So I'm going to do an improv game that demonstrates this. This is, if you've been watching these mini shows, you know I usually do 3 games. And the second one, I like to challenge myself. I like to do an improv game that, quite frankly, I'm not sure if it's going to work at all. It's a game that usually you do with performers, with an audience, with a lot of physicality. So I'm going to see what happens. This is a game that's a version of a classic improv game called Freeze Tag. And the way this game works is, if I was on a stage, it would involve a group of people, and 2 people would start a scene, and they'd move around. At one point, one of the people watching the scene would yell, freeze. When they did, the actors would have to freeze their position. Whoever said freeze would come in, replace one of the performers, take their exact physical position, and then start a brand new scene based on that physical position. So you can see, normally this game is done with a variety of people, at least 3, if not more, and it involves a lot of movement and stuff. But I'm going to do a version, challenging myself, sitting in a chair in front of a green screen with a limited space, just by myself. The version I'm going to do here is called Motivational Speaker Demo Video Freeze. If you've ever seen a speaker's demo video, you know that it's usually clips and cutting back and forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a little bit of like a motivational speech, and then I'm going to yell freeze when I'm in some position, and then I'm going to have to start a new segment of that speech based on that position. So I'm going to be the same speaker, just doing different segments of the speech, so different stories based on the position. So what I need is some kind of motivational speaker challenge, a minor irritation or problem that usually people blow out of proportion. So if you have a minor irritation or challenge that people usually make much bigger than it needs to be, I will use that. You can enter that in the chat box. Otherwise, I'll just provide my own and get rolling over there. So I'm going to pick one. So I'm going to say, My minor irritation was one day I got stuck in a traffic jam for 2 hours, but I overcame that tragic incident and I became a motivational speaker, right? A lot of motivational speakers overcome some tragedy. The tragedy I overcame was getting stuck in traffic. So I'm going to start with a demo video. About every 10-15 seconds, I'm going to yell freeze and then start a new story as the same speaker, but a new story based on that position. And I'm going to move back a little bit so I have a little bit more space. Here we go. Let's see how this goes. Welcome for my motivational talk. Thank you. You know, I got stuck in traffic one day. This was a horrible moment in my life. I was stuck in traffic. I was sitting there driving when all of a sudden the traffic backed up for miles ahead of me and I had an important meeting to get to. Freeze. One day I was doing my laundry and I had to blow it out because my dryer wasn't working, so I had to hang it up really high. Now you might be wondering, what does that have to do with me? Well, how often do we get stuck when technology doesn't work, like my dryer? And instead, we need to motivate and get things up. I had to hang it up by myself. And you can do the same. Freeze. And the waiter came up to me and he was serving me the food, but the way he put it out in front of me was so delicate and gentle that all my worries went away. Now, you may be the same thing, right? Sometimes you are stressed, but if instead of focusing on your stress, if you can be like that waiter and serve with generosity and gratitude, I promise your life will feel better and you will feel better in your head. Freeze. And I had hair growing up here at one moment. I was becoming hairier and hairier, and I had to figure out how to do this. And this reminded me of the time I was in traffic, because what I did when I was in traffic and I was stuck, instead of being stuck there, I shaved. And what I realized, if I have hair up here, I can shave that hair. Instead of being lamenting about my hairiness, I could shave it. So I used the razor right there and I started shaving. Freeze. And then I was on the phone with my biggest client ever, and I heard them say, "We are canceling your contract." And I thought, this is just like that traffic jam moment. This is a bad moment and I'm upset. But I'm not going to yell. I'm going to focus what I can control. I can't control them, but I can control my response. So I hung up the phone and I decided I would never be at the whim of a client again. All right, I'm going to pause right there. So that's an example of a freeze tag game where every time I yelled freeze, I had to pick a new story, a new scene based on that new position, which is really random. Now, what does this have to do with strong offers? Well, what's interesting is this is the idea of starting where you are. Too often, when we are stuck in a situation and not sure where to go, not sure what to do next, and we have an idea, we can't come up with an idea for a strong offer because we wish we were something different. And in this improv game, when I'm doing this with a group of people, or when I'm teaching others to do it, what I've often found is that when they enter into a position, when they say freeze, and they'll come out and they'll take this position, this is not the position their idea is. They'll come in and take this position, and then they'll move a little bit and say, "Oh, I'm going to shoot my bow and arrow." So they're kind of cheating. This is the position, but they subtly move a little bit, right? Or sometimes I've seen them drop the position altogether. So they'll go here and then they'll say, "Why would you do that?" They're not starting where they are. What I tried to do when I just demonstrated this game for you is no matter where I was, I froze in that position. I use that as my starting point. Hey, here's laundry. Oh, here I'm on a phone. Oh, I have hair growing on my temples. Like, whatever it is, you just start where you are and make the strong offer from there. And that's the equivalent of wishing things were different, right? We don't make a strong offer because we're so stuck wishing our situation was different. So wherever you are right now, whether you're loving the fact that you're working from home and you're an introvert, or whether you're struggling because your business has had to pivot 100% and your clients are all canceling, you can't change where you are. Start with where you are and make a strong offer from that point. The second thing that works in this game is the next step is making a new strong offer. Now, what I mean by that is I started here saying, "Oh, I got hair growing on my temples." Now, what's interesting is when you see this in an improv context, some people will never move from here. And what they're then doing is forcing the other performers to come up with a new idea from this position. What I try to do when I play this game, and when I try to do here, is to move my position into a new, interesting position. So I've got hair growing on my temples, so I decided to shave. Well, guess what? This gives me a new position. So I keep offering something new. Similarly, when performers play this, sometimes they'll just drop their arms and stand there, offering nothing to the scene. Makes it real hard for others to come in. So number one, start with where you are. And number two, make a strong offer from that place. That's how we keep it moving. All right, so that's the second exercise at a second idea. Number one, the difference between strong offer and weak offer. Number two, start with where you are, make a strong offer from there, and see where that takes you. The third thing I'm going to talk about is to understand the power of emotions and how emotion drives content, right? What's interesting is we often think that content, what happens to us, what people say and do to us, determines how we feel. And that's true. But the reverse is also true. How we feel directs our content, our words, and our thoughts. And you know this is true because you know there have been times where you've been in an argument and you're getting angry, and when that happens, you start thinking and saying angry things, right? You'll say mean things, you'll say things that are hurtful, your thought all go to anger. But we've also been in the reverse, where maybe you're in a new relationship and everything is great and lovey-dovey. And no matter what happens, your thoughts are positive. Whatever your partner does, whatever that person you're dating does, it's positive, it's great, it's the most happiest thing in the world, right? So how we feel dictates the thoughts we have. Or put in the parlance of this mini show, how we feel directs the offers we make. If you're feeling angry, you'll make angry offers. If you're feeling happy, you'll make hangry offers. If you're feeling hangry, if you're feeling hungry, as a result angry, you'll make hangry offers. So our emotions dictate our offers. I'm going to demonstrate this with one more improv game. This is an improv game called World's Worst, but I'm going to make it special. I'm going to call it World's Worst plus Emotion. So what that means is I'm going to pick some topic, and what I'm going to ask for is a holiday. So in the chat box, you can write down any old holiday you want, any holiday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer questions that you may ask about that holiday. So you can ask me questions in the chat box about this holiday. If not, I've got samples. So whatever the holiday is, I've got questions I can come up with. But then I'm going to pick an emotion, and I'm going to answer the question using that emotion to direct the answer. And I'm going to do about 3 or 4 questions, and then I will explain kind of how the emotion drove the content and what that has to do with offers and strong versus weak offers. So if you've got an idea for a holiday, go ahead and throw it in the chat box. So I'll just pick one. If not, I'm going to say Halloween. So I'm going to be an expert here on Halloween. And at any time you want, if you'd like to participate, you can write down a question about Halloween. And what I'll do is I'll read your question, and then I'll pick an emotion off my list of emotions here. I'll take on that emotion, and I'll answer your question from a place of that emotion. I also have got some generic kind of fill-in-the-blank questions that I can use to fill the data here. So if you've got a question about Halloween, any random question, I'll go ahead and throw in the chat box. Otherwise, I will start. So I'll say, what is the weirdest thing you have ever seen a person do on Halloween? Oh, Groundhog Day. Even better. Thank you, David. I like Groundhog Day. I love going with audience suggestions. So Groundhog Day. So if you've got a question about Groundhog Day, go ahead and throw it in the chat box. But I will begin with some generic things. So I will say, number one, what happens if you lose your groundhog on Groundhog Day? What if you lose the groundhog on Groundhog Day? So I'm going to pick an emotion. Delight. Yes, losing your emotion on Groundhog Day, you don't understand. That is the luckiest thing that can possibly happen. Because when you lose your groundhog on Groundhog Day, you can just tell people whatever you want. You can just tell them that, hey, the groundhog came out and it ran away and it didn't see, clear that means it didn't see its shadow, so spring is here. So don't think of it as a bad thing, but think of it as a good thing. All right, David's asking a question about the Great Pumpkin, which is a Halloween question, but I'll tie it to Groundhog Day. Is the Great Pumpkin real? Emotion. Emotion. Disgust. Is the Great Pumpkin real? Is the Great Pumpkin real? Why would you ask that? First off, the Great Pumpkin is from Halloween. We're talking about Groundhog Day. Number two, don't you know that pumpkins are the enemies of groundhogs? Pumpkins are poisonous to groundhogs. If your groundhog eats a pumpkin, it will die. Number two, if your pumpkin grows on top of the groundhog hole, the groundhog will be stuck there. We'll be stuck not only with 6 weeks of winter, but we'll have winter forever. It's the worst possible scenario. So if the Great Pumpkin is real, we are all screwed. The groundhog is dead. What if it's partially sunny? Boredom. If it's partially sunny, you know the problem with being partially sunny is that nothing happens. If it's partially sunny, the groundhog comes day, he gets bored, and he lays there, half in his cave hole, half out of his hole. You don't know what he's doing. and you just look at him. You don't have an answer. Did he come out? Did he not? Nothing happens. Everyone gets bored and goes home. We make no predictions, and we have to wait a whole year with nothing happening in Punxsutawney. All right, I'm going to stop right there. Thank you for participating, David. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the questions and holiday. So now that's an example of how to use emotions to drive content. Now, the way that game works is what I try to do is I get the question. Before I start thinking of my answer, I try to really feel the emotion. That's why if you watch this back or if you remember, you may have heard me repeat the question a few times. Now, I repeated it not to stall for time, which is what some would do. I repeated it to really feel the emotion. Great pumpkin. Great pumpkin. I tried to get really into a sense of disgust. And then an idea would pop in my head. Why would it be disgusting? Boom. And that drove the content. It'd be disgusting because we're talking about Groundhog Day, not Halloween. It's disgusting because don't you know that a pumpkin will kill a groundhog? And that drove the content. So it's a way of driving creativity. When I thought about delight, why it's so great, I felt delight, and boom, why would it be delightful that whatever the first suggestion was, if you lose your groundhog, why would it be delightful? Boom, because you can make up anything you want. Now, what does that have to do with offers? The emotional state you're in directs the content and the offer you make. If you are feeling angry, you're going to come up with angry solutions. If you're trying to brainstorm, hey, I'm locked down at home. How can I pivot my business? How can I connect with my remote staff? How can I manage having my kids on the other side of the door when I'm trying to run a business meeting? If you're stressed and overwhelmed, well, guess what? Your mind is going to provide stressed and overwhelmed solutions. If you're upset, your mind is going to make upset offers. So if you're struggling coming up with ideas, shift your emotion, right? Find a way of being happy so you can come up with happy ideas. Now, it's not just happy. If you're always happy and elated, that's great. You're a wonderful, positive person. But you're also going to generate the same quality of ideas. Try a different emotion. And you don't have to. You could use this generically or artificially. You can say, hey, let me pick an emotion. Let me pick love, courage, helplessness, fear, relax, whatever. Pick a different emotion, but the key is that you feel it. Don't make it an intellectual exercise of like, what would a relaxed person do here? You're going to be cutting your creativity off. Instead, feel the emotion and see what idea pops out. If you do that, you'll come up with new offers and you will come up with strong offers. Because in addition to emotional states, often we brainstorm from a neutral state. Like we're just here, oh, what can I do about this issue? We're not really emotional anywhere. So you may come up with stronger offers if you pick an emotion, feel it, and put it out there. So thanks for joining. That's my mini show on the topic of making strong offers. Number one, understand the difference between a strong offer and a weak offer. A weak offer is vague. It doesn't provide any detail and doesn't move anything forward. A strong offer is specific and it moves the action forward just one step. It doesn't have to be a giant thing, but just one step at a time. Make strong offers to keep moving forward. Number two, start with where you are. Just like freeze tag, don't wish you were somewhere else and change the position. Say, here's where I am. I'm going to make a strong offer from this place so I can drive myself forward. And number three, understand the power of emotions. The direction and quality of your offer is directly related to the quality and direction of your emotion. If you keep trying to come up with offers from the same emotion, you're going to come up with the same solutions and ideas. If you want to change it up and come up with different things, shift to different emotions to see what comes out. So thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this, please share the video. Click share, let other people find out about it. I'm going to be doing these weekly. In the comments, I'll write down a place where you can sign up online to get notices of these. But also, if you friend me on Facebook and like my Facebook page, you'll see notices of these as well. And if you've got suggestions, if there's a topic around improv, applied improv, yes and, anything I do, give me a suggestion because I'm always looking for what should the next theme of the next mini show be. Hopefully you had fun. Thank you very much. And hopefully I will see you next week as well.